Hi guys, it's Kelly and I'm back again with another video. Today we're going to be using this super sweet little stamp set. This is Valentine Penguins from Gerda Steiner Designs. I've used their stamp sets before. I think they're super cute and this little penguin set is no exception. So I'm starting on Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock and I'm just kind of giving myself a guideline because I am going to be drawing in my background. Typically, I do a combination of Distress Oxides and Copics. This one's going to be mainly Copics. There's a little bit of Distress Oxide, but just very little bit. So I have this in the Mini Misty now, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my penguins. There's actually 4. Look at it. Did I sound like it was a question? There are 4 penguins in this set. And I thought that it would be really, really cute. There's one that's kind of like holding this little string of hearts. And there's one that is flying, it's holding this little heart balloon. And so I thought it would look super cute if it looked like he was like coming home to her. So landing with his little heart balloon. And she's there waiting with her little string of hearts. So anyway, I've put down some Eclipse masking paper. And then I am... because it's so thin, you can see through it. So I'm kind of like tracing the lines that I already had there to create some masks to build my background. So I'm masking my penguins off as well as that balloon. And I have on bright red nail polish. So sometimes what happens is I forget that I have on dark colors or bright colors, basically anything that's not a neutral. And I will go to try to pick up one of my masks and I end up leaving like almost like a streak of nail polish on my card. So in order to avoid doing that, I was using my Ranger craft knife to kind of catch the corner to readjust it. For the background, I wanted there to look like there was kind of like glaciers in the background. So that's what I was drawing. Now I did cut this out. So the very top piece is the glacier. Then I'm going to have the water, the ocean in the middle. And then like another snow bank that this greeting penguin, that's what I'm calling her, I don't know why, this greeting penguin is going to be standing on. So I originally cut them into 3 pieces because I figured I was going to do the water with Distress ink, and then I changed my mind. So here I'm using some Salty Ocean to just kind of put down a sky. This is the part that I almost always use Distress ink for if I'm doing a sky, because I have not figured out a way to mimic that smooth blending with Copics yet. So until I do, this works for me and I'm totally fine with combining mediums. So once I had the sky where I wanted it, I'm going to remove the glacier part. And this is error number 1. If you guys haven't figured out yet, typically if my video is a long one, it's me because I've messed something up, which is like every card. So if you feel like you're sitting at home and you're like, I'm the only person who ever messes up anything, everybody's cards are always perfect. Lies. My cards are never perfect. So mistake number 1 is I realized I wanted there to be 2 glaciers, but I didn't cut 2 masks. So when you're putting on this Distress ink, you're really only adding the shadows because the glaciers are going to be whitish. So I'm using the Salty Ocean, and then I'm also using Wilted Violet, but I'm not inking up that foam pad. I'm just using whatever's left over from the last time that I used it. And then I'm going to remove that little piece for the glacier that's going to be in front, and I'm going to do the same thing. But each time I'm going to leave that white edge on top. You would do the same thing if you were doing like snowy hills, anything where you want it to be white and you're just adding the shadows, make sure you leave that white. So here I've decided I'm going to wing the water with the Copics. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of shading at the bottom where I know my other snowbank is going to be. So again, doing that with the same colors. You could absolutely do this blue or you could do it gray. I just happen to like a little bit of blue violet in my snow. That's kind of what I've always done. That's just how I prefer it. If you don't want to do 2 colors and you just have regular Distress inks, Shaded Lilac works beautifully for shading snow. So here I'm going to go ahead and remove the masks, and then we're going to get into the Copic coloring. So I picked out a bunch of colors because I'm going to try my hand at this Copic water bit. I've really never done it before. So I'm starting with my lightest color, basically because I'm a chicken. Total coward. I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to really get any control over what I was doing. And so I just kind of wanted to map out the area. I knew that I wanted it to look like the little snowbank was melting into the water. So I have a couple of different pieces, and then I'm, pretty much just going to kind of fill in most of the area with this, what is this, BG11. And I knew in the background that the glacier was going to have a reflection. And so I wanted to make sure that I had that kind of reflection going on. So I've pulled out this BV to do just the striping. You know how you get that when something reflects in water, obviously because water is moving, it looks like it's striped. So this is what I'm trying to mimic here. And I wanted that reflection to be striped. It totally gets away from me, guys. It's such a hot mess. But we will fix it. So all the colors that I showed you, which was a variety of BGs, Bs, and just that one BV, I'm just doing stripes, like just flicks of color. So you can see, and I apologize that the top portion, which is actually the right hand side, is off the screen. But I just got so fixated on trying to create what I was trying to create that I really kind of stopped paying attention to the fact that the camera was on. So my bad. But anywho, so I'm just going to go through each one of those colors. I'm doing the same thing, using the flicking motion. Sometimes I'm using the side of the marker if I want a wider stripe. Sometimes I'm using just the tip of the marker if I want a thinner stripe. And as I'm adding these colors, I completely forget to reserve my reflection. That's what's happening. While we're in this little lull here of you just watching me do the same thing over and over again, I do want to mention, if you are watching in February of 2018, I can't even believe I'm saying that, Gerda Steiner, actually, their website, they have a sale going on right now. So they have a 20% off sale, which includes the stamp set. There's a 20% off your order. So it goes through February 9th. Today is the 8th, so sorry I got this up it's only a 2-day sale, so please forgive me. But anyway, it's a 2-day sale, so by all means, please pause the video, the link will be linked below if you're watching on YouTube, also linked on my blog. Go over there and check them out if you've never used their products. Their stamps really, really are super adorable, and they're high quality. I have a couple of them that I purchased with my own money because I just really love them. So anywho, and even if you're watching after this and you're not familiar with this company, even if the sale's not on, go check out their store because it's just good stuff. Anywho, so you can see we're kind of starting to look like water here. I'm going to go back through and put down that BG11 all over everything to help those colors blend together. And I was really kind of happy with the way that it looked. I was like, yeah, it looks like water. And then I was like, no, it looks a little bit weird because I don't have any definition. So I'm going to take this BG, I think it's a BG07, and along the edges, I'm doing like a drop shadow. So just along, pick one, whatever it is, bottom right, bottom left, whichever one floats your boat, and then do a little bit of darker shading, and that's going to help it look like it's kind of popping up from the water, which is what we want. We want it to look like it's sitting on top of it. And then here is where I realized that I have completely just disregarded that reflection. So now I'm going to try to fix it because that's what I do, guys. I mean, and especially at this point, like, I'm so invested in this card. I've done this masking, this stamping, all of these streakings. So I went back in with a colorless blender and I just tried to scribble out as best I could the water toward the back where the glacier is going to be. I'm going to go in with that BV00 and flick color from the base of the glacier out into the water. So that way I have that nice purple color. I know that I'm going to be using that in the glacier. So I wanted to make sure that was there. And then I'm going to go back in with the colorless blender and see what I can do to kind of blend the two together. Because typically a BG and a BV aren't going to blend, but we're going to make that happen. We're just going to stick with it until we get something that we're happy with. Once I did this, I realized that the streaking of the water was completely gone in the reflection and it looked very strange. So now we're going to go back in and do some more of the streaks. I'm just going to be less heavy-handed and much more aware of where I'm putting them. So I did end up being able to save it. Right now it looks a little funny because the glacier isn't colored, but just hang tight because once we get there, it will start to look a little bit like a reflection. So you might have just heard that. That was me kicking. What is this? I can't even think of what it is. Paper cutter. I kicked the paper cutter because I got a cramp in my foot. Does this ever happen to you guys? Like it wakes you up in the middle of the night with this like mad cramp in your foot. I've heard so many different wives' tales. We'll come back to this cramp in the foot because now we're moving on to the glacier coloring. So basically what I'm doing is I have 3 grays, and what I'm doing is I'm doing like striations. When I Googled pictures of glaciers, this is what they looked like to me from afar. So sometimes I'm doing like a heavy block of color. Sometimes I'm just doing streaks. I'm doing them from the top and from the bottom. Just anything to kind of give me that look. Now, I went fairly dark with this, but you certainly don't have to. I think the lighter you went, the more off in the distance they're going to look. But I kind of wanted mine to look like I don't know, like a quaint little pool almost. So once I have the C1 down, I'm going to go back in and do the same thing with the C3. Each time I'm putting them, sometimes I'm putting them on top of the C1, sometimes I'm putting them in a different area because I want this glacier, this small glacier in the front to kind of pop forward. I am going to outline the top of it and give it a little bit of darkness behind it so that it will come forward and look like it's in front of the other glacier. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way for how much shading you do or do not add. I wanted to leave quite a bit of white because it is a glacier. But you could, you could do pretty much whatever you wanted to do, whatever, you think looks like a glacier, yourself. So Google pictures. And I would encourage you to do that no matter what kind of background you're doing. If you're not, if you get a kangaroo stamp and you're like, I want to do a scene right out of Australia, then Google pictures of a kangaroo habitat and it'll show you kind of like the vegetation or the type of dirt, like in Georgia, there's red clay. So if you were doing something like that where it was like a southern scene, you would want to kind of follow those guidelines. With that said, these are cards, people, so don't limit yourself. If you want a purple cow, make you a purple cow. I mean, you just do whatever you want to do. They're your cards. But this is how I approach it. So I did want to put some blue in there, and it is a B26, but it does have a blue-violet feel. So once I was happy with that, I did go back in with the C3 and the C1 to kind of blend out just a little bit of the colors, and I added some shading from the base, kind of where I had already put that Distress ink, up towards the top. What was I talking about? I said I would come back to my foot cramp. That's what it is. So my grandfather used to swear that if you ate mustard, that it would get rid of a foot cramp. I've also heard drinking pickle juice will get rid of a foot cramp. When we did, what were they called? When we did the boxes for charity for Simon Says Stamp, I can't even remember what we called that. Anyway, they did this drive, which was extremely, extremely generous of so many companies, and as well as Simon Says Stamp. Basically, companies donated to give product to boxes, and then people could buy the boxes and get product for like half the price, but all of the proceeds went to hurricane relief, which was amazing. And I was so thrilled to just be a part of that. Stand by. We'll come back to the story. So here off screen, don't worry, I'll bring it back. I wanted to add some shadows underneath this little penguin, and because it is in snow, the little footprints would make impressions. So I drew almost like little bell shapes because a penguin's foot is wider at the top than it is at the back. So I drew these little bell shapes, and then I'm adding some shading just underneath her so she doesn't look like she's just kind of floating there in the middle of the air. I did add a little bit of shading to the 2 footsteps that are closer to her because I knew that I was going to be going over them with these lighter colors. So I did that, and then I'm going to go in and add just a little bit of that BV color to the shadow, and then to the shading on the snow that's kind of out there floating in the ocean. Now we're going to move on to no, I'm lying. I'm doing damage control. That's what I'm doing because I just was like, caution to the wind with trying to get that reflection back. I didn't really pay attention to where the ink was bleeding to, and it was bleeding into my penguins a little bit. So again, colorless blender to save the day. I just went back in and cleaned it up. Thankfully, penguins are black, so I didn't really have too much to worry about because I'm going to be covering it all up with some dark grays to make them look black. Speaking of that, that's what we're doing right now, and I'm going to fill the entire the black portion of the penguin in with a C5. This might seem a little bit light, but it's actually going to be my highlight color. From the C5, we are going to the C7, but I want you to note on this one's a her hands, I'm not taking the shading all the way out to the edges of her hands. The reason I'm not is because when you have an object that is black on black, you want to leave that highlight on the edges so that there is a clear delineation of where her hands are and where her body is. So allowing that, just even if it's just a sliver, which is really, that's all mine is, even if it's just a sliver of highlight, it's enough separation for her arms to be pushed forward in front of her body. So I'm doing that, and then I'm going to work back. I go lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. And so I'm working back out to that C5. I'm going to do the same thing for the other penguin. When I was Googling pictures of penguins, I noticed a lot of them had some really kind of bright yellow around their neck area. So I thought that would be kind of a fun little element to add. So I'm doing it just kind of in a triangle shape, using just the tip of the marker and some flicking motions. And then I'm going to use a C1 and a C3 to shade their bellies. I'm also going to add some shading next to their noses, like kind of in their eye sockets, so that it pushes the nose forward and makes the eyes look a little bit more concave. So anyway, this foot cramp. So anyway, when I went down to, I keep wanting to call them masterpiece boxes, which is another box that Simon did, which I was blessed enough to be a part of, but that's not what they were called. Anyway, so hurricane relief. So we went down there. We were sorting product, packing boxes, doing like the tape runner, the wonderful, the wonderful people at Simon showed me how to use a tape runner because I didn't know how to use it. I was not very adept at getting it done. Every time I would run the tape across, I couldn't get it to break off clean at the end. But anyway, so while I was standing there, I had worked during the day at the one job, and then I drove to Columbus to pack these boxes. But so I had basically been going all day, and in order for me to go all day, I was drinking coffee, and I did not drink any water at all, which caused me to be dehydrated, which means while I was standing there packing boxes, I got the world's worst foot cramp. Like, just totally debilitating foot cramp. And I kept trying to put pressure on it to make it go away, and it wasn't happening. So I literally spent, I think 20 minutes walking the parking lot of Simon Says Stamp trying to get rid of this foot cramp so I could go back in and be a productive member of the team again. Anyway, moving on back to the coloring. I picked bright pinks. They are little Valentine's Day penguins, but they certainly don't have to be little Valentine's Day penguins. You could use them for whatever. But I thought that the bright pop of pink would be really fun with that blue-green color. So the way that I color my balloons, I wanted there to be a shiny spot, so I left myself like a comma shape in the corner. And then when I added the shading, you can see I left a light area on the left-hand side. This is going to be like reflective light that's going to help give it some shape. So I go all the way out to my darkest color, but I don't take my darkest color all the way up. I only leave it where that balloon is gathered. I'm going to fill it all in kind of with my mid-tone. And then RVs are very... the RV02 really, really picks up the RV04, so I can go around those edges and know that I'm going to pick up a lot of color, and that's going to work really well for me. I'm going to go back in and do some white highlights. I'm going to add just the lines to the glacier so that there are those striations. And then I am also going to add some to the snow so that there's a white highlight on that bank there. I did add some along the water as well, just to add some interest. Not that I think there'd be a ton of waves. I don't think there would be. Well, you know what? I don't know. Maybe there is. I outline all of my images because I think that they make the colors pop, and that makes me happy. So I'm doing that with an EK Success writing pen. And then I was looking at this card and I was like, that penguin would be casting a shadow. That penguin would be casting a shadow. But again, I am terrified to put in the shadow, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it, figure out it is what it is. Hopefully it works. Thankfully, it did. So I started with a C1. I basically just drew a smaller version of the penguin that's up above it. It's not perfect. You can see I'm going back in and kind of reworking that shape because he was a little bit too round on one side, and then his one foot looked a little funny. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. It's a shadow. As long as you're giving the illusion of that shape, it's going to look A, really awesome, and then B, it's going to give the appearance, because really you're just tricking the eye into being like, oh, that's his little shadow, how cute, and then moving along. Sorry, I was checking to see if my sentiment was lined up. So this little sentiment, which is included in the same set, says, "You are so loved," and I thought that was just adorable. There's also one that says, "Waddle, waddle," like WADDLE, waddle I do without you, which is cute. And then I'm so glad you're my friend. So there's just a lot of really cute ones. So after I stamped my sentiment, the only thing that I did was add some clear sequins just to kind of fill up that area. Almost like he's, coming down with this little sprinkle sequence, which I think is super cute. So that's it. That's the whole card. Don't forget to head over to the Gerda Steiner site if you're here on February 8th or 9th of 2018 to check out that deal. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.